Welcome to the Franciscan Spirituality Center in La Crosse, Wisconsin's What is Spirituality podcast. Your host, Steve Spilde, is the Associate Director at the Center. His guests talk about their evolving understanding of God, prayer, healing, and wholeness.
Welcome. It is my great pleasure today to introduce again Jean Pagliaro. Last time we had her on this podcast, she was the program coordinator for the Franciscan Spirituality Center. As of a couple of weeks ago, she now is the director, the executive director of the FSC. So I'm excited about that change, and I'm excited that you are willing to join us today, Jean. Welcome.
Thank you for having me on here.
You have experience in congregational leadership. How do you think your experience in the parish prepared you for your current role as executive director? And how do you expect leadership at the FSC to be different from congregational leadership?
Really good questions. As a leader in the church, I was often pulled in many directions. One question that I was constantly asking was what we were doing and focusing on furthered the mission of the church. And that was, I think people probably got sick of me asking that question, but many times we found that the answer was yes, that we were living out the mission of the church, and sometimes an answer was no, and we realized that we probably did not need to be offering that particular ministry or program at that time. And so I think that's a way of discernment, and I really think that that's helpful for here as well. Another piece, I was often present in the church during some of the most difficult times and also most wonderful times in people's lives. And so one thing that I learned is that I don't always need the right words, and often it's simply being present that communicates support. And so I hope to offer that kind of presence to staff, presenters, and guests here at the center. One way that leadership is different here is that I have more of a direct role in financial oversight. This is new for me. At the church, it was important for me to understand budget needs and anticipate costs for the year, but here that will be even more so. And so I'm actually looking forward to learning more about that and the processes that we have here.
So you first assumed congregational leadership approximately 15 years ago. What changes have you witnessed in the church between the time when you first assumed congregational leadership up until probably prior to the pandemic?
You know, that's a really interesting question to think about. And up to the point of the pandemic, I think this has already been starting. But I just think about this in terms of clergy and congregational leadership and the number of pastors that are available to serve congregations. And that number had been declining, and I think even more so since the pandemic. And now I think this is a trend that's probably going to continue for a while. Well, I know this creates challenges for congregations in a lot of ways. I also think that there's some hope in that. Clergy and other leaders are asked to work hours that are pretty unsustainable. They're asked to be problem solvers and mediators and preachers and wedding and funeral planners and volunteer coordinators and office managers. And I'm wondering and sensing if this may be a time where the role of clergy can start to change and where more congregational leaders are lifted up. And to me, that feels hopeful. I know not all congregations are feeling that way right now, but I think there is hope that the leadership in the church may change to allow for a little bit of healthier leaders in congregations. And so that is a shift that I have seen, especially in the last 15 years, for sure.
Do you see a role for the FSC to support congregations and church leaders going forward as this transition continues?
I do, and I think that's where we can really have a role as congregations, faith communities are looking to focus more on self-care. Not only self-care, meaning go away for a long time and come back and then you're going to be suddenly renewed. I think we have a really unique situation and presence here where we can help congregations, leaders, individuals, congregational members learn how to set some pretty good boundaries, practice good self-care in the midst of a busy life, in the midst of crisis in ministry, in the midst of what is already happening, and how we provide presence not only with programs, retreats, but also spiritual directors and other supports that are here. And I think we can actually play a pretty crucial role in that, in the wellness and well-being of congregations.
Jean, you love to read. You
do.
tend to read fiction, correct? I mean, you read a mixture of things,
I
but
do.
fiction's your favorite?
Yeah.
How has fiction enhanced your understanding of spirituality?
I love this question. It has been really fun for me to think about this. And there was an article in Relevant magazine a few years ago, and it's called Want Spiritual Growth? Read More Fiction. And it was written by Rick Cummings, and I love it. And one of the quotes in there, he says, stories, including and maybe especially fiction, teach us how to live well by opening our eyes to experiences we couldn't otherwise have. Stories are a kind of playground for the heart, the mind, and the soul. Just reading fiction helps me gain perspective into people, emotions, situations, even if they're hypothetical, just things that I may never have encountered before. Even though it's fiction, I feel like I still gain empathy, understanding. It keeps me grounded in how I like to live out my faith and walking with other people. And for me, reading fiction is a form of self-care. That's one of my absolute spiritual practices. And I love to get so caught up in a book and forget everything else that's going on. And it's delightful for me when I totally lose sense of where I am and I become absorbed in a story. And so my family knows that if I'm reading, to make sure that I put the book down before they ask me anything, because I won't remember what I said yes to if I'm reading. That is something that we have learned as a family. So,
Well, I think of then, for people like you, the beauty of the environment that we're able to offer on retreat, because people in a busy life oftentimes don't have the chance to read like you like to read. So this is a little shameless pitch for our retreat facilities. But it's, for people who long to have that, like, wow, where can I get the space to just read undisturbed? They can come on a retreat.
They can. And we just started up again the in-person Franciscan Days of Solitude. And that's often what people do. They come, they have a room for the day, they meet with a spiritual director, but then they also have space to do whatever they need to do for the day. And a lot of times people will bring books that they want to focus on, and not all of them are academic books.
I like how you label it as self-care. I think a lot of times people feel like if they do go away for a retreat or something like that, they need to be productive. Even then, they need to be productive. But just creating space for self-care is the foundation on which all the other good things they do is built. But if you don't have that foundation, it's really hard to be productive and take care of business in the other areas of your life.
Absolutely.
When you meet someone new, how do you describe the mission of the FSC?
I say amazing a lot. I say that the FSC is an amazing place where you can come and experience hospitality and welcome, and where you can be supported in your spiritual journey and whatever that looks like for you. It really is a place to nurture anyone seeking God, meaning, and wholeness. And now I'm really excited to be able to tell them that they can also come and stay here in one of our newly renovated bedrooms that include private showers. I think we were able to continue to offer things during the pandemic when we were out of the building for the last couple of years and during the renovation. And it just feels even more exciting now knowing that we can welcome people back to a physical space and then offer the bedrooms as well.
You've served at the FSC for the past 4.5 years. As you become more familiar with the work of the FSC, what have been some pleasant surprises?
There have actually been a lot of pleasant surprises. First, it's been really wonderful forming deeper connections with the presenters that we bring to the center. Presenters that some of them were kind of on my bucket list for, oh my gosh, I would love to get that person to come here and present. But then also to just our local presenters who have such a wealth of experience and knowledge and deep spirituality. And so it has been a joy forming those relationships. And then I've learned so much from them, and now I've formed friendships with some of them as well, and that has been great. A wonderful surprise is how much I enjoy working with all of our staff here at the center. We really are a great team, and it's a really good feeling knowing that I look forward to coming into work and interacting with staff, and I fully expect and hope that will continue even in this new role. Another surprise, we were just talking about this today, is how delicious the food is here. We have really, really good food. And many of our staff make delicious treats, and so that is always an added bonus.
Nice. I'm curious, like your bucket list, who's still on your bucket list that you'd like to invite someday? I mean, there's people like, yeah, we'd love to have Brene Brown, but I think she's out of her budget. But people that are maybe reasonable people that we would hope to have come.
I know you have also been hoping to have Jan Richardson come.
I'd love to.
Yep, so she is definitely on that list. And other ones, I'd have to think about that a little bit more. But even some of the authors, like you and I were talking about Louise Erdrich, how amazing would that be to have her come and present and what she writes about, the deep spirituality that she has, but also how that translates into her books and what she writes about. So I would say those two come to mind right away. So maybe that can be, maybe we could start working on Louise Erdrich too.
Well, you've always wanted to get Kate Bowler, haven't you? And
Yes. And she would be, we had tried at one point, and then I think it was right before the pandemic hit. And I think she would bring such a powerful testimony and witness to grief and just how she has been able to then support others in the journey of grief as well, and just highly respect her. And I think she would definitely be on the bucket list.
What's the name of her book? It's one of the all-time great titles.
Everything Happens for a Reason and Other Lies I've Loved.
What a great retreat it would be to build a grief retreat around that.
Absolutely.
The FSC is proud of its past and traditions. How do you see the FSC growing and evolving as it moves into the future?
So the FSC really does have a wonderful history, and that was actually one of the learnings and deep appreciations I have for the center, even before I really knew what I was getting into when I started here. I appreciate that we've been able to hold on to some of the traditions, such as meditation, prayer circles, spiritual direction, program themes like centering prayer, sacred listening, creative expression. I do think that we have amazing opportunities here to deepen our connections with local organizations and to find ways to offer collaborative programming. I also think that we have great capacity to go out into congregations and organizations and offer spiritual growth opportunities or experiences that help staff connect on a deeper level. An offering that I know we have brought on the road quite a few times has been the Enneagram, and I know you've done that a number of times now, and departments and staff seem to get a lot out of learning about their particular number and how each personality contributes to the greater dynamics of the team. And so I think that is one that we can really continue to grow and bring on the road. And so I think we have a lot of outreach opportunity, and that's really exciting. And I'm sensing that places have been reaching out to us, and I think they will continue to do that.
Looking ahead 5 years, how would you complete this sentence? In 5 years, I hope the FSC will be more blank.
In 5 years, I hope the FSC will be more directly connected to systems of wellness and care in the community. And what I mean by that is that organizations and faith communities will know us more because we have formed deeper connections with them, and they will consider us to be an integral resource in spiritual formation and support. So I want us to be thought of as one of the crucial teammates in our community.
What would you say to someone who has never attended a program at the FSC?
Come and see what we're about. We won't try and convert you to any particular faith tradition. The coffee is always hot. The space is always welcoming, and you might be surprised at what you learn about yourself and your spirituality. We'd love to welcome you here.
If you have any questions about any of the programs that they offer at the Franciscan Spirituality Center in La Crosse, Wisconsin, we invite you to call us at 608-791-5295. That's 608-791-5295. You can also visit our website at www.fscenter.org. www.fscenter.org. Thank you for listening.